If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members.
Imagine this scenario. It's 8:47 in the morning. Your phone buzzes with an emergency broadcast system alert. No explanation, just a tone and a code. Within minutes, reports are coming in of coordinated mass casualty attacks across 3 American cities simultaneously. Cellular networks are saturating, local law enforcement is overwhelmed, and National Guard deployments are rolling out in at least 6 states. And the attackers, nobody knows who they are yet. No foreign military, no uniforms, just men who lived in your country, in your neighborhoods, who nobody flagged, nobody tracked, and nobody stopped. It was already here. It was already waiting. And tonight we're going to rip the cover off the network nobody wants to talk about. The Iranian proxy warfare network and the online recruiting arms of Al-Qaeda and ISIS are the primary hostile systems driving this threat. This is not speculation. It's documented architecture. Iran has maintained embedded networks inside the United States since the 1980s, operating through Hezbollah cells, IRGC-linked operatives, and a pipeline of foreign nationals entered through open borders and lax vetting. Also, recent lone wolf attacks here in the homeland have been undertaken by jihadis radicalized online by Al-Qaeda and ISIS. What they want is simple: to make American civilians feel the cost of American foreign policy without ever having to win a conventional war. They do not need a battlefield victory. They need a body count, a panic, and a news cycle. That's what asymmetric warfare against civilian society is designed to produce. The trigger for activation isn't a calendar date. It's a geopolitical signal, and that signal's already been sent. It's March 25th, 2026. This is Survival Dispatch News. I'm Chris Heaven, the CEO of Survival Dispatch. Joined tonight by combat wounded Green Beret Randy Nance, 26-year CIA case officer Jeff MD, and 26-year military veteran Don Vandergriff. So bottom line up front, global conflict has crossed the wire into domestic territory. Foreign terror networks embedded across more than 25 American cities are closer to activation than at any point since 9/11, and most Americans have no idea. Asymmetric warfare does not target armies. It targets civilians, soft infrastructure, and psychological stability. Your church, your neighborhood, your kid's school, these are the battlefield now. Tonight, we're going to cover how sleeper networks operate and activate, how extremist propaganda turns lone actors into weapons, and what you can do right now to harden your position before the order comes through. So we're going to jump directly into segment number 1, the activation architecture, how sleeper networks move from dormant to live. The shift from dormant to active in a sleeper network does not require large organizational command. It requires a signal, a prepositioned asset, and a soft target, all of which are already in place across multiple American cities. The Iranian proxy warfare's network domestic architecture has been built over decades using a combination of legal immigration, student visas, and the Biden-era open border as a logistics pipeline, meaning any of these assets entered the country, many of these assets, entered the country with documentation and established cover. Law enforcement and intelligence agencies are stretched thin right now, with FBI counterterrorism units having absorbed cuts and DHS resources redirected towards immigration enforcement, which means the detection layer between a dormant cell and an executed attack has been degraded exactly when the threat environment is spiking. So I'm going to bring the boys on stage here, and as per usual, going directly to Jeff MD with the first question. Jeff, do me a favor and walk us through the activation of sleeper cells and lone wolves, because they're not necessarily the same thing. We've got long established sleeper cells here, But we also have these, guys who've never physically touched Al Qaeda or ISIS, but they're on standby, ready to go.
Yeah, sleeper cells are a little more complicated because there's a structure there. There's a cell leader. There are members of the cell that have different roles. Some may be logistics, some may be shooters, some may be drivers, and they generally have a predetermined target or targets that they need to, when they get their activation signal, they've got to, I don't want to say they formulate a plan. They already have a plan, but they have to act on that, which means, okay, Mohammed, you have to you have to get the van. Okay. You have to get the weapons that are stashed, or maybe buried in your backyard. They're in a storage locker somewhere. They have different roles, different activities they have to do before they can initiate the attack. Lone wolf, he pulls his own trigger. He may be looking for a sign from someone, a sign from God. And it may come in the form of, the Iranian foreign minister getting on the internet and saying, we want our brothers in arms to go forth and revenge the dead Iranians. And then they pick a target, they pick the time, they do everything else. So those are very difficult to detect or to do anything about. But a cell, there's activities they have to do before they can conduct their attack.
So that raises another question before I go to Randy and Don. How do the handlers communicate these activation orders to embedded assets in a way that evades intercept, particularly given our, signal intelligence capabilities, especially at the NSA level? That's for you, Jeff. You're on mute, Jeff.
Yeah, I was getting there. I thought you were asking somebody else. It's very, they can be very simple. They don't have to be, they could be a message board. It can be, selling a goat and then they put up a phone number, and that phone number is the key, or it can be a sequence of words. It can be anything. And it can sound innocuous, or it can sound alarming. But if it's a read-only message board, how many people see a message on a message board? Maybe hundreds. How do you know which one is the bad guy? You don't. There's a lot of, and we've done this in the agency when you're communicating with assets overseas or in denied areas. If they have internet access, all they have to do is access, it could be a sports team message board. Maybe they're big fans of Real Madrid, and they go to Real Madrid, and you post something and there's a keyword in there and they see it. That's their signal to go do X or Y. Yeah.
So if we're eating somewhere in public, or we're at a public venue, and I ever say the word avalanche at our table, that's the code word for everybody at my table. Get up and leave. We're not going to discuss it. Nobody's going to ask why. We're just leaving because there's some imminent threat or perceived imminent threat. And our guardians, I've told them multiple times, if I ever say the word avalanche in any context other than what I'm doing right now, it means SHTF is happening. So I'm assuming they could do something as simple as that, right, Jeff? I mean, it doesn't take anything super complex. So Randy, coming to you next. Given the documented Hezbollah and IRGC presence, not including all of the ISIS and Al Qaeda lone wolves, but the intelligence shows that Hezbollah, IRGC has a pretty significant presence, Detroit, Boston, New York, Portland. Do you reckon by this point in time there's probably any mid and large size American cities that don't have sleeper cells? Or do you think that they've chosen to concentrate in some of the bigger ones?
Well, I'm sure that they have some sort of strategy, right? Because I don't know that you could be in every single city in America, maybe every major city. I'm sure that's probably entirely plausible. We just look at, how many, now that we know the cartel, and I get it, cartels, most of them came from Mexico. They're a lot closer, but still they have to come from another country, and they're in all 50 states. And then we look at, we know that sleeper cells, or we know some of those folks have been here for decades, not just the 4 years from Biden, but we already had some here. So I would say it's very plausible that they're in every major city. I don't know if that's how they lay the metrics out. There could be some other reasons of why they could move into some other ones, into smaller municipalities, maybe, but it's easy, as we know, it's easier to hide. The bigger the population it is, the easier it is to hide. And certainly we know all of our major cities, what they look like now. And it would be very easy for them to hide in all of those.
Ridiculously. The only intelligence that's been shared with me that has anything specific to smaller towns and cities is that those are secondary or tertiary points. In other words, they kick something off in a large city, then they go outside of the city to terrorize, some smaller cities.
That's frankly, that's what they did with Baghdad. When I was out at Taji, which is where Zarqawi was killed. And that's where all the leaders were at that time, because there was no patrolling from the United States forces. No, they weren't patrolling out there because it was too dangerous. And so they would do their planning and even make their V bids and IEDs and EFPs out there. And then they would drive them into the city and then place them wherever they wanted.
Yeah, that's a great point. I didn't know that, Randy, but that certainly, dovetails nicely. So, Don.
Yes, sir.
With the FBI counterterrorism resources thinned out, they got rid of a whole bunch of personnel just before Operation Epic Fury started, and the DHS really focused on immigration operations. I know nobody has a hard number, percentage range, or whatever, but what do you reckon the gap is between our ability to detect this stuff in advance versus the size of the threat?
I think it's significant because even with the open borders caused by the Democrats for 4 years, and before that by Democrats and rhinos because they love the cheap labor, but more so under Biden because there was no vetting and catch and release and all kind of crazy stuff, that we have cells here. And unfortunately, most of the federal agencies are dominated by left wingers. I mean, FBI is one of those great examples. Look at what occurred with the Russian thing, with the fake Russian dossier and everything. So they would tend to go, as most far leftists do, ignore the problem, or not even ignore the problem. They say, "Oh, Americans are colonization, are imperialists. They deserve this, but we'll be protected because we have our own security." So the gap's probably significant, unfortunately. And the reason the purges occurred in a lot of those agencies was exactly what I just said. They did not. My inside sources have told me from Department of War, they did not realize how big the threat was, how many leftists dominated the federal government, and so they purged. And maybe that's a good thing, because even if they were in those jobs, they would look the other way or not prosecute, or what we're seeing with judges now, throw guilty verdicts out of the courtroom because they're protecting the minority. So it scares me to think the gap of what is out there and what they have targeted.
So let's do a quick audience poll, because you raise a good point there, Don. Just myself, I feel that most of our federal agencies are a mess, and it's the career bureaucrats that are a bigger problem than anything. And I also feel that major city police departments are a problem as well, because they're under the direct control of these woke mayors and that sort of thing. I personally, as far as law enforcement's concerned, the one group that I trust more than anybody else are the sheriffs.
Yeah.
Because they're elected and they don't have to answer. So that's the audience poll. If you agree with me that the sheriffs across our country are probably the most trustworthy, effective law enforcement agencies, of course, there's going to be outliers, but put a 1 in the live chat if you agree with that. And Randy, I want to come back to you. We've touched on this before, but we've got a lot of new viewers, and you were a paramedic before you were Green Beret, and I know it's been a number of years now, but give me let's do a hypothetical here, Randy. What does the first 24 hours look like, not just for law enforcement, but first responders in general, if attacks kick off across the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex?
Well, I'd say at first it's going to really depend on which municipality it's in, right, and what kind of resources they have. But it was all the way across the city of both of them. You know, it's a very large area, so this would be different. It would turn into a chaotic war zone pretty quickly, because I don't know the numbers. We'll just take Dallas, the city of Dallas, for example. Now, one thing about the city of Dallas, those Dallas cops can go into anywhere in the county because it's also Dallas County.
That's right.
But there are Dallas County sheriffs. There's a Dallas County Sheriff's Department too that is separate. However, there are a lot of police officers in the city of Dallas and a lot of cars, or a lot of patrol cars. Why I know this, now this was back in the 80s, but one of the times that I was on an ambulance, and our little station that we got to stay at overnight if we weren't working, was an apartment off of 75, which is Central, and it was in North Dallas. And one of the times we came back, there had been some sort of robbery while we were out. And then those guys escaped the scene, left, and as it turns out, in their mom's station wagon. Not very smart. Then they pull over on the side of the freeway and they hop out, and then they run and they go into the apartment complex that we happened to stay at. And when we got back, we couldn't even get in, because there were bumper to bumper police cars around the entire complex. I've never seen that. So my point to that is, I always pointed out before, you know, if you had these attacks and then they really specifically targeted the first responders after that, and they take out all those vehicles and those crews, it's going to be very hard for some of these municipalities to get back up online, because they probably don't have a whole bunch of more resources. The bigger counties like Dallas, they will. So that's what my point. It would be like a war zone, because then you're going to see, they're going to call in every single law enforcement official in the county. And they're going to call out to surrounding counties to have them send in some assets as well. Because like I said, this is a big area. And if you had, let's say, I'm just going hypothetically, and they came, because now we know how many people are here, and I'll try to pick a low number because I think it could be more. But let's say they had 2,000 of these guys that came in across this area. They could do a fair amount of damage very quickly. And then it would be how the responses were from the people involved, the civilians, and then how good or lucky law enforcement is and the first responders when they take over. If they're not lucky and things go roughly, your smaller municipalities are going to have a lot of trouble, because then there won't be much first responders left. There won't be a lot of cars for cops to come in, and those are going to end up getting trashed at some point through the whole mayhem. And I would say that it would be a time that I would want to pack me up some stuff and pop smoke out of the area to let it cool back down, give it some time, because that would be an absolute nightmare in a area like this.
Yeah, it would. So I just pulled some numbers to share with y'all. So Dallas City PD right now has 3,307 active law enforcement officers, which is 700 head count, short of the head count that they want. Then Dallas County has 2,100, but that includes jails plus administrative staff. So actual, boots on the ground in Dallas, maybe around, say, 4,000 ish.
And that's inadequate. If something like this happened, the 4,000, as you well know, that's not very many when it comes right down to it.
And also, Randy, like you said, all those cop cars around one block, they have that doctrine of massing on the point, especially with a gun, to try to minimize casualties, of course. But that's going to be easily fooled when they want to mass those guys to hit them, like you just talked about. Well,
if there was, let's just say hypothetically, there were 10 different areas that were hit, even if they were on the city of Dallas, they're not going to be able to do that at each one of those. We would not have the assets to do that. You're right.
Add this to your calculus, gentlemen. So the city of Dallas has 60 members on their SWAT team. Dallas County has 20 SWAT team members. Fort Worth has 30, so Fort Worth PD, 30 members on their SWAT team, and Tarrant County, which Fort Worth's in Arlington, for those who don't know that, has another 20. So all combined, not including, Plano, Grand Prairie, and that stuff, but the big metropolitan areas and counties, you're looking at about 130 SWAT team members. So, Jeff, I got to come to you on this. Let's just stay on this hypothetical for a second here. So there's, a bunch of attacks, let's say, happen across the Metroplex, all the way from Fort Worth to Dallas, all points in between. And you have a grand total of, 130 SWAT team members. And you might be able to you might have about 5,500 officers. And again, many of whom work in the jails as well. What does that first 24 hours look like, Jeff, in your opinion?
It's going to be a certain amount of chaos because, Tarrant County Sheriff's Department, is primary objective is to secure Tarrant County. Fort Worth's police department's job is to protect Fort Worth. Trying to get, and if there's the first attack may be the one best responded to, if it's in Dallas, and then Dallas can, put out the "come save me" message, and everybody rushes to Dallas to help them out, which is what they should, mutual assistance. But then there's an attack in Tarrant County, or there's an attack in Grand Prairie, or there's an attack in Hereford or Eustis, somewhere else. So then what? Are you going to pull your people out of Dallas? That attack is still ongoing. And then, and pull them back to respond to yours? Or are you going to respond to yours using regular street cops? It would get to be a mess because they're going to be running it in multiple directions at the same time.
Yeah. So because I'm proud, Tarrant County led the charge at one point in time for everybody in North Texas to get on what's called the, let me get the acronym correct here again, NTIRN. So North Texas Interoperable Radio Network. There's 190 entities now in North Texas, first responders, PDs, sheriff's office, who all leverage that. So in a bunch of other jurisdictions, one of the big hangups is typically when they call for mutual aid, the radio comms is terrible, right? That's what happened in Butler, PA, for example. The person who was supposed to set all of that up in advance dropped the ball, didn't get it set up. And now you had all these agencies that couldn't communicate with each other. But fortunately, in North Texas, at least they can communicate. But the manpower numbers are incredibly low, in my opinion. Don, I'll give you a last swing at this before we go to segment number 2. What do you think of that ratio of numbers as far as the number of SWAT team officers, regular officers, and a huge metropolitan area like the Metroplex seeing multiple attacks simultaneously?
It's real low. It's not sufficient. It would be sufficient, say, if you had triple the SWAT teams, because the regular street officer can always cordon off an area that's getting attacked and wait for SWAT. But if there's multiple attacks, the SWAT team is going to be, one, it's going to be undermanned, and two, it's going to be exhausted, because they're not going to give those guys a break because they're the ones that can handle the trained cells. Now, the lone wolf cells, as Jeff talked about, we've seen the low level of training, the bombs at the New York mayor's thing, and in other cases. But against an organized cell that has training, they're going to be exhausted.
Yeah, and as Mike Glover stated multiple times, amongst other people, these jihadis today are not the same jihadis we went to war against 20 years ago.
Yep.
They're a significant level up from there. So let's get into segment number 2, the propaganda pipeline, how lone actors get manufactured. The 2026 annual threat assessment from DNI Tulsi Gabbard last week confirmed that lone wolf attackers inspired by extremist propaganda represent the most likely near-term terror threat to the homeland, and the radicalization timeline has compressed from months to weeks in multiple documented cases. ISIS released an editorial on January 1st this year explicitly calling for lone actor attacks throughout 2026. And law enforcement sources confirmed that ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and pro-Iranian networks have all intensified digital recruiting and incitement operations since the Iran conflict began. The Austin bar shooting, on March 1st, the Old Dominion University, ISIS-linked attack, March the 12th, and the failed New York City bombing attempt that Don mentioned on March 7th. None of these are isolated. Those are all early data points in a pattern that is accelerating, is going to continue to accelerate, and it's in direct correlation to what's happening overseas. So per usual, Jeff, I'm going to come to you. Oops, just a second here. I went click on LAPD SWAT. Thank you for the tip. Appreciate it very much. I don't know if you are LAPD SWAT or not, and I don't want you to say online either way, but pretty much everybody that I've worked with in law enforcement credits LAPD SWAT team as being not only the best in the country, but probably the best in the entire world. So hats off to LA for having a great SWAT team. So Jeff, how does the online to offline radicalization pipeline operate in practice? In other words, like, what platforms do they use? What kind of content do they use, to shape their thoughts, their feelings, their mind, all that kind of stuff? And what are some of the triggers that have been uncovered in the past where somebody had like a grievance of sorts that got them to actually go from consuming this content to actually undertaking an attack?
There's it usually starts online. There'll be a website, and it'll look innocuous. Hey, you want to learn about Islam? Here you go. And they use that to kind of sift people. And they can tell by what content they click on, what questions they ask, and they can see, are they just a looky-loo, or are they already a Muslim who just maybe is looking for like-minded, good Muslims out there. It might be a confused kid who's heard a lot about, Islam and wants to learn more about it. And that I can't remember the kid's name. The one who was captured who was at College on Guy when Mike Spann was killed. I can't remember the idiot's name. But
you talking about Bergdahl?
What was that? Not
Are you talking
Bergdahl.
about
No, it was before that. It was when we went in initially. He was there. I can't remember. It was a white kid, an American kid, was curious, and then kind of got sucked into it. He wasn't from a Muslim family, nothing like that. But so they use that to sift, and the people who are more receptive, or they look at it as maybe having more utility, they'll want to get them either in a private chat room or eventually meet them face to face so they can get hands-on, eyes-on assessment. But also, when you talk to someone face to face, there's no electronic message or track record of what you've said on any one of these message boards or something like that. Someone else can be reading it too and taking notes. But once you go in real life, all that record goes away.
Well, since you're our in-house encyclopedia here at SDN, Jeff, have there been any operations like the catch a pedophile type deal where we've had undercover resources penetrate this stuff and actually result in dismantling some of this infrastructure?
Well, the Bureau has done a lot of that, but they don't try necessarily infiltrate the mosques so much as they put up their own message board and invite people coming in. And, that's when you get the guy who's building a bomb, but he bought fake explosives from the FBI and he gets arrested. I have a problem with those kind of operations because is it that they're detecting a radicalized kid, or are they taking a disaffected kid and radicalizing him and then arresting him? So it's a lot of entrapment. There's a lot of confused teenage kids out there. And I'm sure if you if you put your effort to it and you had some shrinks on staff who could tell you what buttons to push, how many of them could you radicalize? Probably a lot.
Yeah, you raise a great point there, Jeff.
It's the Fednapping case in Michigan with Whitmer.
Yeah.
Would that have ever gone to where it went without the FBI funding it? There were more FBI agents involved in that operation than there were terrorists.
Exactly. That's kabuki theater, right?
Yeah.
So, Randy, this radicalization timeline has, really compressed in recent years. Do you have any idea what's driving that acceleration? Is it like ISIS and Al Qaeda? Their game is that much better than it was before, or have they lowered their standards as far as, recruiting and radicalizing and just, kind of crossing their fingers that the weak minds that they do recruit actually have some element of success? Or is it something else? But it just seems to be happening very rapidly, 30 days in some reports.
First of all, I'll say that, I will say, that's, I think that, the reason it's going the way it is now leans to what I've said a lot of times, right? We haven't mitigated it. And when I say we, I mean our federal agencies and the people that are supposed to be doing these jobs are either helping them or looking the other way. And I think just like when ISIS popped up when it did, if we had a real administration in there instead of Obama, and of course, rumor has it Obama helped set them up, so that would make perfect sense. But regardless, if we had somebody that would do something about it, they could have been snuffed out very early, but we didn't. We let them go, let it get bigger. And I really think this leans more to, certainly in the beginning, that we didn't do anything about it properly, right? The way that we should have as a country and as a defense standpoint and a national, certainly as a national security issue. But then on the flip side of that, now I also think that they're getting a lot of help, right? They've gotten a lot of funding, they've gotten a lot of help, and they've gotten a lot of training from just about everybody in the world, including us. So I think all of that comes together in a perfect storm, and that's why it seems to be just all of a sudden blown out of proportion, mainly because no one's doing anything about it.
Well, yeah, you kind of set Don up. Maybe didn't really set him up too well for the next question. But Don, from an intelligence standpoint, how do you distinguish between somebody who's consuming this extremist content and someone who is on a genuine, path? Like they're going to do something, they're going to take action, they're going to commit the act. But how do you determine, or how do you make that distinction from an intel perspective? Seems to me there's a lot of signal to noise ratio here.
There is a lot of signals. You're going to see patterns and patterns of recognition, and those patterns will be consistent mainly on the type of information they seek versus hyperbole, or just because someone's searching, they really don't know. There's not a pattern set there that they're searching for things that are continually evolving. So they're always, the real radical is continually seeking more details and they're learning. Whereas the person that might be either interested or just thinking about it or just curious will just scrape the surface. So there are ways to determine who the radicals are and who they are not. And then you'll have those who, as Randy, all three of you guys have said, they'll have codes as well and be specific what they're looking at or looking for as far as signals.
Yeah, man, you raise a whole bunch of questions, and after the next couple questions, I'm actually going to take us on a detour down a deep rabbit hole. But Jeff, I want to ask you first, just great follow-up to what Don just said, is, ISIS explicitly called for, lone actor attacks in 2026 at the beginning of this year, right? And I'm curious, how effective is that at getting people to light up? Is there an element of it being like a psyop against us to basically say, hey, we're going to radicalize your own people against you? Combination of both?
It's a combination. I mean, what you do by saying that, you get people scared. And, you know, the attacks may never materialize, but if you get one or two, you can say, see, we have people in your country. But also it gets the FBI and Homeland Security and local authorities kind of chasing their tails, going, "Oh crap, they've activated these lone wolf guys." Well, maybe they had, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But you've got to take all those threats seriously. And what it does, it ties up resources. One failed attack will tie up so many resources. One, responding to it, investigating it, and then doing the postmortem on it and saying, okay, how can we prevent this somewhere else? And so you get, one idiot goes and shoots out the front window of a 7-Eleven and yells Allah Akbar, and you've got millions of dollars in resources being wasted trying to figure out, why did he do it? Who triggered him? Who else is involved? Are there others out there like him? And it was just one idiot with a 22.
Well, that I'm telling you guys are raising more questions, but Khalid has spoken frequently of these probes, right? Which we had a shit ton of in 2025, where maybe it's a false active shooter, call. Maybe it's a false bomb threat, but the bad guys are watching this and determining what the SOPs are for the first responders, where they made people exfil, all those sorts of things. Any of you can answer this. Do you reckon that maybe some of this lone wolf stuff are those guys who are just triggering a probe? Like there was a guy on an airplane, pardon me, last summer. Do y'all remember him? And he stood there and he's like, Allah Akbar and all this stuff, but he had no zest behind him at all. The whole thing looked like a probe. But you go ahead and take first swing, Jeff, and then Don Rand, if you want to chime in.
Yeah, that could have been a probe, or it could have just been an idiot. And we have lots of those in this country too, unfortunately. But the problem when if you're trying to initiate a probe on purpose, and you're depending on a lone wolf to kind of activate himself, for you to be observing it, but you don't know who he is or where he's going to strike, that doesn't make sense. To do a probe, like we saw with all the bomb threats on campuses and stuff, you need to know where the threat is, and then you can watch the response. When you're just calling for any lone wolf actor anywhere, you don't know where it's going to happen, so you may not be in a position to watch the response.
That makes perfect sense. Randy, it looked like you wanted to chime in on this.
No, I think Jeff hit it good. There's no, there's, you can, unless you already have a bunch of people out there festering a little bit, how many people get up and do something on their own? As I talked about all the time, it's only like 5% or less. The rest of the 95% of people aren't going to do anything. So, it comes down to that filtering too, as he mentioned earlier, right? That's what they're really going to do. So that's how they're going to find the person that's most vulnerable and most likely to go ahead and come on board and do whatever it is, whatever crazy thing it is.
Before I forget, Randy, I want to compliment you in your choice of hat tonight.
Hey.
Good stuff.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I can't believe you have the same one. Look, my patch is a little lighter.
Well,
You're darker skinned.
Wasatch Wagyu sent us these badass hats. And, we appreciate it very much. Thank you, Greg. So I'm going to take us off the beaten path. We're going to go off the brief for a second because I want to show this video. And I was texting back and forth with Tommy Robinson on this. Everybody in the panel had a chance to watch this in advance as well. Just quick trivia. We've had Tommy Robinson booked to be on SDN 3 times. And 2 of the 3 times he was arrested just before he came on. This is back when he was in Europe. Hopefully he's on safer ground now. But this video is a few minutes long. I'm going to play the whole thing. It's 2 minutes and 59 seconds. This video confirms everything that Khalid's been telling us, plus his intelligence is backing up as far as the progression, right? The progression went from attacking countries in the Middle East, especially Pakistan, third world countries. So these terrorists love to test out their TTPs there. Then moving to Europe, and then moving to America. This video is pretty chilling. I didn't know if it was legit or not. It's not AI, but I didn't know if it was actually legit current. And Tommy was able to confirm this is legit and current. So put your seatbelt on for this one.
So following on from my video from yesterday, I want to make things extremely clear so people understand where we are at. I have a source that is located in France, which has been able to provide me with very, very damaging and very concerning information, videos and pictures about the migrants and those that traffic them. The information that I'm about to give you will show you that they are making trips through Europe, and that when they land here, they are organized, very well organized in terms of weapons, in terms of cash. Now, one of the things that people need to understand is that terrorist organizations are also benefiting quite highly and quite financially by the trafficking of these people into France. And what we've now found is we seem to have family members of ISIS commanders on the boats heading to England in the last few days. They are talking about a ISIS commander called al-Awlaki. Anyone that wants to do their research and find out who they're talking about is actually an ISIS commander, who's a very senior ISIS commander. You're going to see the video of them on the boat hailing and talking about this ISIS commander, which in turn means that they are part of the caliphate. And also those that are on the boat know exactly who he's talking about, because they all celebrate it when he says the name. And then you hear him talk about his uncle, which implies that potentially this ISIS commander is his uncle. This is proof that we have even those that are connected to ISIS and ISIS members here in the UK. And it's very important that our security services and our authorities start doing something to tackle this. But on the 16th of May, we have to send a very clear message that our women and children, and even ourselves, are in grave danger, and something needs to be done. Please share this far and wide.
صبر يا عقاب لا يخفاك صبر ولا وسع بالي انا ابن الكل دهرهم ماتوا وعاشوا الفرح طيف ونسيته وراح من بالي هلي تدور السنين وعيدهم تابوت من هور الصحين الحزن
26/9/2025 نفرات ابو حسين العراقي بقياده ابو حسين العراقي. ابو حسين عمي واحد اوروبا واحد بريطانيا ابو حسين العراقي مقطع بس ابو حسين العراقي 14/1/2026. يلا يا شباب تحياتي لابو حسين.
So just in case this is too small on your screen, 3 days ago, praising ISIS commander Abu al-Hussein is served as the fourth caliph of the Islamic State, appointed November 2022. And that's pretty much the entirety of that video. Let's go back here. Don, I'm going to give you a first crack at this since I didn't give you a chance to respond to the last one. Apologies.
No, I'm a big fan of Tommy. I mean, he's doing great here, by the way, and he's being funded by a lot of good patriots because, again, they want to arrest him in UK for telling the truth. I agree that the same thing is occurring here as well, and I'm amazed they released a video on it. I don't understand the reason for that, but maybe that's a deception operation, or maybe they're letting their people know that they're gathering. But it's just, what really bothers me the most is how the so-called elite of England have betrayed their own people. And they're not, just like the French Revolution, they're not going to be free when the radical Muslims take over. They're going to go after everyone. So all these elitists that think they're doing something to redeem or apologetic for past, they claim past colonialism or imperialism. No one's going to be free of this. Matter of fact, they may go after them first. So that's the biggest thing that bothers me.
Yeah. Jeff, I want to get your opinion on that video. It seems to me like things are getting ready to intensify in France and Great Britain in particular.
Yeah, those countries have fallen. They don't know it yet. That's the sad part. It's like a guy with stage 4 cancer who hasn't been to the doctor yet. Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. We just got to make sure, keep it there. You know, Britain and France, they could, you know, counteract this, but they don't want to. And it's amazing to me. It's one thing to say, okay, I have cancer, I'm going to seek treatment. It's another thing to say, I know the doctor said I have cancer, but I don't believe it because right now I'm okay. And no one in my family has had this cancer. Therefore, I can't possibly have it. They're in denial.
Yeah.
Are they in denial or are they complicit?
Some are complicit. The general population is either in denial, or you got the Tommy Robinson types who see it for what it is, but they have no power to do anything about it.
Yeah, sure. Or even diminish power because they've been persecuted so much.
Yeah, and they don't have guns. They can't like take back their country. They can't have their own revolution like we did when we threw the Brits out. They can't overthrow their government. They don't have any. They don't have any guns.
Why the Democrats want to take all our guns away?
Absolutely, it is.
Well, that's because we're the firewall between globalism and freedom. Randy, you get final cleanup bat on this one.
Well, to me, you know, if we go off of Khalid's information, what it signifies is that maybe we are getting closer to something happening, because he always said it's going to be in Europe and here both. And this is an indication that they are ready to move there in Europe. They wouldn't have showed this video and all these people coming for no reason. And, you know, I think that it's an indication. And, Donald has said he doesn't know why they released it. Well, it's the same concept that we talked about, why they're not going to kill the internet and if they're successful in pulling off these attacks. During these attacks, initially, they're not going to drop the electricity or the internet because they want the word to get out. Mm-hmm. This could also be, a signal, just as Jeff described. It can be very simple. When they play the video of ISIS moving into France, you know that it's time to start getting ready. You know, it could be a signal, as well as what we see it for what it is, that they're moving in there for a reason. They're going there for a reason, and that's like a call to fight video right there, is really what that is. So I think we're about to see something, if nothing else, in Europe. And then, as we've all mentioned, I would pay close attention, because that's exactly what's going to happen here. You know, and the sad part about it is, as Jeff mentioned, we want to keep it there if something starts happening there. But what if they fall? Because they've got nukes. And then what do we do?
Well, yeah, and I mean, we've harped on about this long before Don started on the podcast. So just a note on that for our audience, especially our new audience. Pakistan's a nuclear power, but they have old fission style nuclear warheads. They do not have any ICBMs, so that has to be able to carry a warhead 3,300 plus miles. So they're a regional nuclear power. And the reason I say this is because 96% of Pakistanis are Muslim, and people say, well, we don't have to worry about Muslims with nukes because, you know, Pakistan's Muslim, they have nukes. Well, they have regional nukes. The big concern, and as far as I know, I haven't heard anybody else but us ring the alarm bell on this. The problem is that the French and the British governments are this close to falling to the Muslims. And in both instances, so France is worse because France has the complete triad of air, land, and sea nuclear capabilities and thermonuclear, not old fission style nuclear. And then the British have 8 nuclear submarines with our Trident missiles on them that can reportedly deliver thermonuclear warheads anywhere in the world inside of about 45 minutes. They keep them out to sea so that they can respond relatively quickly. But what happens when the British government or French government or both of them fall to the Muslims? You now have a contingency of people who hate our guts and have thermonuclear warheads at their disposal. That's the scariest thing about everything that's going on in Europe, as far as I'm concerned. So let's get into segment number 3, the soft target doctrine, why civilians are the battlefield. Modern asymmetric warfare doctrine, particularly as deployed by Iranian proxy networks and ISIS-inspired actors, does not target military assets because it can't win that fight. It targets civilian society specifically to generate psychological shock, media amplification, and political pressure. The March 12th vehicle ramming at Temple, Israel in Michigan, and the simultaneous ODU shooting in Virginia were not coincidences. They were textbook soft target strikes designed to hit community anchors, specifically a house of worship and a university in the same news cycle. Federal threat assessments confirm that soft targets, including houses of worship, mass gatherings, shopping centers, and public transit, are the priority target set for both foreign-inspired and domestic violent extremists in 2026. And those targets remain almost entirely undefended by any consistent national security architecture. So coming first to you, as usual, Jeff, why do these terrorist planners consistently select houses of worship, schools, public gatherings spaces over harder government targets or military targets? And I know the Iranians are targeting some of that stuff here. Some really crazy stuff been going on in Shreveport, Louisiana with drones the past couple of weeks. But as far as the lone wolves are concerned, they pick those same targets. Why is that, Jeff?
Well, a couple of reasons. One, oh, I see my pictures.
Yeah, you're froze up.
Let me fix that real quick.
Yep, no problem.
Let's come back up. There we go.
All right.
One, if it's a soft target, you can do more damage with the same amount of firepower. But if you're going to go into a government building that may have armed security in the lobby, you'll be lucky to get past the lobby, especially if you're a lone gunman. So that's one. The other one is your target selection. If you only want to kill Jews, hit a synagogue. If you only want to hit Christians, hit a church. It's your targets are self-selecting. If you're a Muslim extremist, you don't want to kill innocent Muslims. So you go someplace where innocent Muslims won't be. And then you can also send a message back to your own people. I've killed the infidel. I killed the Jews. And that, you're that way you're probably going to die in the process, but it makes you more memorable.
Yeah, that's a good answer, Jeff. So Don, I'm going to come back to you on this one, just because this is a topic that we've discussed ad nauseum, but I want to get your take on it. So Mumbai 2008, 10/7 in Israel, 2015. So November 2015 in Paris. Yeah. They were all CCTAs, right? Complex coordinated terrorist attacks, where you've got multiple sites being attacked and you have, multiple, call them cells. And a lot of the intelligence on the Al-Qaeda side shows that that's precisely what they want to do for 9/11 2.0, the Al-Qaeda version. Keeping in mind, Al-Qaeda and ISIS are not under the control of the IRGC. Hezbollah and Hamas, on the other hand, are. So you have cooperation, but in reality, there's two separate bloodlines here. How realistic do you think it is for them to pull off CCTAs, complex coordinated terrorist attacks in America, Don, especially in multiple cities?
Oh, it's very likely. I mean, a matter of fact, that would be the preferred way, as we've all talked about just earlier, about police forces, both county, city, and towns being overwhelmed by even one attack because they all mass at it. So they want to do something that's coordinated or synchronized, as a military term, in order to overwhelm the system. Let me harp back to something too that Jeff mentioned about the earlier comment about the attacks. The other reason you attack soft targets, because what's the backbone of every society? It's economy. And you start taking out those kind of targets, soft targets, people will stay at home and your economy will start to die. They'll be afraid to go out. And that goes along with the reason for the complex attacks, because when we're sitting in our safe spot, or we claim it to be our homes, and we look out all of a sudden, and the attack, like I'm in Northern Virginia, Prince William County and Woodbridge, and there's an attack in Arlington or in Maryland, I don't think a lot about it. I say, well, that's them, the normal person. But if there's a complex attack that happens in Maryland and then in Loudoun County and then here at Potomac Mills, then I'm like, oh man, it's occurring everywhere, and I'm going to sit tight. Or not in my case, because like I've talked about before, we have a plan to rally the patriots and do something about it. But most people are not going to do that.
Yeah, true story, true story. So, Randy, I got a twist on a question that you've answered many times before, but it's a big twist. So, from a preparedness standpoint, what are the fundamental hardening measures that these community places can implement? So, churches, schools, shopping centers, etc., without any budget. What can they do when they have no budget?
Damn.
Well, I'm not the end all be all, but I would say if you don't have any budget, then they've got to get creative. We certainly know there's a big veteran community out there that would be probably more than happy to go help schools out and churches out and probably even malls out. So the reality is, if we were serious and we could get serious, some of these communities, certainly the ones that we know that are far more risk, you would think that they would put some of these things in place. And even without a budget, they've got to have some locals around there. You know what I mean? If, as we mentioned previously, and guaranteed Keith Graves does, every church, every ministry has parishioners. So and those parishioners have different jobs, just like everything else. So you would be able to also use your group there. Schools, if you're not doing veterans, they all have parents. So you could rely on some of those parents, or at least you could try to lean on them. And it's just getting that word out that there's a need, and generally good people will come out and try to fill that need or straight up do it. So.
Yeah, true story. I mean, as you were talking, I was thinking to myself, there's multiple SOPs that those people could put in place, right? In other words, I think most schools probably now in the country, once class is in session, they lock the front door. Here in Florida, they also lock the gate to get in as well. So there has been some improvement.
That's only going to do so good when we're talking about something like this. They can lock the doors all they want. If something like this, or even a lone wolf guy comes up there and shoots his way in one of the doors, done. So I get it. That is a measure you would take. And I think that schools are doing that right at this point. I bet churches probably aren't. Hospitals probably aren't, but it's again, you would have to start those conversations, but even with zero budget, as we know, they can lean on plenty of people to volunteer. And as one guy here put, Bible tards are everywhere. Well, you better be lucky that they are, because if everybody was like you, nothing would get done and nobody would help anybody. So that's the truth of the matter. So we definitely need more people that believe in the Bible, so that we have people that actually want to do good things and help out when it's time to do that, and even when it isn't.
Yeah. So, I mean, my thoughts is that when you stack up SOPs, nothing's going to stop somebody from getting in who wants to get in, but you slow them down, and the time that you buy may give you the opportunity to actually stand a chance.
Look at what we've done at courthouses. You can't get up next to any courthouse now, and no matter how big or small the county is. Now, we're not going to go rebuild the schools and hospitals, but we know with HESCOs and pipes and fence, you can, limit how you come in and out of that place, which would help greatly.
Yeah. And before I go to Jeff on the next one here, I just wanted to quickly say, I had lunch with Lou Holtz years ago, and it was an incredible lunch meeting that went on for 3 hours. And he said a bunch of stuff that made an impact. But one of the things he said really stuck with me, because I competed for many years on our national powerlifting team, set a bunch of world records. And in athletics, there's always somebody taking a shot at you. Well, there's a reason why you won and they didn't win, and blah, 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 whatever, but Lou Holtz said, there's two types of people in this world. There's those people who elevate themselves by elevating everybody around them, and those people who elevate themselves by putting other people down. So the shithead who made that Bible comment, that's a very insecure, insignificant person trying to elevate themselves by putting other people down. I'll repeat what Lou Holtz said. The good news is you got a choice on which bucket you're in. It's up to you.
I think you're right. Before we move to Jeff, I just want to point out, do something different a while ago said, and we have a new term. So now when Jeff's screen freezes up, it's not Jeff, you're on mute. It's like, Jeff, you're on ice.
I'll take that.
Yeah.
So, Jeff, the DNI threat assessment specifically identified Jewish institutions as the single highest priority target category for 2026. I haven't heard a whole bunch of people discussing that. And I mean, I just haven't heard coverage on it.
Well, the left doesn't want to cover it.
Well, that makes sense.
The media, the left media, because to them, Jews are the bad guys, and anyone who's our friend is a bad guy, because to them, we're bad. And the friend of my enemy is my enemy kind of thing. It makes absolute sense that, any Jewish institution is going to have be in the crosshairs. Part of it is the Muslim world hates Jews no matter what, just because the Jews control the Holy Land, that part of the Holy Land. There are three major sites in Islam. There's Mecca, Medina, and the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. Well, Israel controls Jerusalem, and they don't like that. And so anything to them, anything Jewish is evil. You had Judaism, and then an offshoot of that became Christianity, and then somewhere offshoot of both of them sort of is Islam. And it's almost like the kid who doesn't like his parents is, Judaism was, of the Christian Judeo system, children of the book, as we call it, or as they call it. The Jews are the oldest, and they don't like that. And so you've got the entire Muslim world basically gunning for Jews. So any Jewish institutions can have a big freaking target on it.
Do me a favor, Jeff. Draw a distinction between Jewish people and Zionists, because they're not the same.
No. Jewish people are either ethnically or religiously, they believe in Judaism. Which is basically the Old Testament of the Christian Bible. Zionism is more of a political movement, a Jewish political movement to reestablish, the Christian or the Jewish control over the original Jewish territories. And that includes the West Bank, because in Jewish history, the West Bank was what, I can't remember the two provinces, something in Judea, but they were integral to the kingdom of David and the kingdom of Solomon. And they want to reconstitute all of that. And, I get it. That's their history. They can believe what they want, but the countries who are currently, in those lands go, not so much. So that is a much more, I guess the word would be radical version of Judaism. Being a Jew just means you read the Talmud, you worship, Jehovah, and you're basically a Christian who kind of ignores the New Testament.
Yeah, fair enough. It's kind of a dry topic, but there is a distinction to be made there. So, Don, you get to final question for this segment before we move on. How does the psychological warfare piece of this civilian targeting work? In other words, what specific effects are they designed to produce? And is there any ways that communities can counter the effect without surrendering to it, like the psychological damage of hitting these soft targets?
The effect of hitting human targets throughout warfare is to collapse society from within and prove that your government, which its first act is to provide security to its people, which the Democratic government does not believe in. They favor illegal terrorists over American citizens. But what that would do is collapse the society within, because if you cannot count on those people that you've elected and appointed to areas of security to secure you, then you're willing to submit to that other cause. Okay. And it's happened throughout history. But as you asked me, we can do something now. We're seeing the ties with the church security thing going on, and churches reacting, schools reacting to security. Communities need to do the same thing. It would be like, for example, a good idea through the local VFW to form some kind of citizens league or militia that's not threatening, but is for self-defense. Israelis are great study in that, how they've done their country. And we should promote the same thing. The problem is you're only going to get the red states to do it, because the blue states are going to see it as a threat to their ability to control everything you do.
Yeah, thanks, Don. So that's it for segment 3. We're moving into segment 4. But Randy, I got to ask you a question. Be truthful. Don't lie about it. How many Wasatch Wagyu jerky sticks did you eat today? You're on mute, Randy.
So far, 2.
Listen, you have to eat like a fistful like this if you're going to get into our support group that Mike Glover and I have for crack addicts that are addicted to Wasatch Wagyu jerky.
I can't afford the habit that you guys have. So that being said,
touche, fair enough. And just a quick reminder, SD20 gets you 20% off at wasatchwagyu.com. I'll put the link down below in a minute. So segment number 4, the detection gap, why the government cannot save you in time. The institutional layer designed to detect and neutralize domestic terror threats has been significantly degraded. FBI, Iran-focused counterintelligence units were cut. DHS is operating through a partial funding lapse, and the NTAS warning system went dark for weeks during the most dangerous threat environment since 9/11. The CBP commissioner's memo from late February confirmed that thousands of Iranian nationals entered the country illegally under the Biden installation, with an unknown number of additional gotaways whose identities and intentions are completely unresolved. The operational reality for the average American is that the gap between a cell receiving an activation order and law enforcement being aware of it is wide enough to produce significant mass casualties before any federal response is in motion, which means community level preparedness is not optional. It's the first line of defense in, every sense of that saying. So Jeff, coming right back to you, when you look at the current posture of DHS, FBI counterterrorism units, fusion centers, where are the biggest operational gaps in this domestic detection, infrastructure or architecture right now?
I think it's your local PDs, just because local cops know their communities better than the FBI. They know their communities better than DHS. It's just because they're there, they're on the ground. They've lived there. A lot of them have lived there their whole lives. They know these people. But getting that information into a national system is problematic, because, if you have a town and they've got 200 cops, well, there might be 2 that know what's really going on inside the Muslim community. But if those 2 aren't connected to a joint terrorism task force or anything, or no one knows to ask them what's going on, stuff they see that may make the hair on the back of their neck stand up doesn't have anywhere to go.
So throughout 2025, we fielded a lot of emails and phone calls from city police departments, and it was typically somebody who was below the executive and asked us, could you give us some additional information that I can take to my chief and, kind of light a fire under them to get in a proper posture for what's coming. And almost across the board last year, the chiefs all said the same thing. The fusion centers haven't given us any information from the feds, so therefore we are not going to do anything until the fusion centers alert us. And so for those of you who don't know what the fusion centers are, it's one of the things that came about after 9/11 1.0, where the feds established fusion centers in every state to disseminate information specifically related to terrorism and counterterrorism. So, Randy, part of that is the NTAS, the National Terrorism, alert system. That's all been shut down, right? Like as soon as the partial government thing got shut down, DHS lost funding for that. There is no NTAS. Well, if there's no NTAS and the fusion centers are not passing on information, NTAS is the only other mechanism that the feds use to distribute that information to city PTs and sheriff's offices. I mean, that's going to have a huge downstream effect. Maybe give me worst case scenario on that, Randy, on something. If this wasn't going the way it is, I think we could have prevented some of this, not all of it, but some of it. But I'm pretty black-pilled that we can't stop any of it right now.
Well, let's just take California, for example, and the fires, right? Now that everybody looks back, nobody thinks that, this was some sort of huge mistake, an accident. You couldn't, do away with all the water and everything else they did, including over the last 10 years or whatever, not doing the trimming that they normally do that helps reduce some of these fires. And the only thing you can deduce from that is it has to be intentional. This has to be planned out. You look at where Biden left us with all of our reserves, whether it was oil, ammo, or anything else. All these can't be just, oh my gosh, I made a mistake. Oh, we didn't mean to do that. Or it was an accident. All of it can't be. It just can't be. So it all comes into one, and you just have to realize that it's probably intentional. These centers, as we know, most of the stuff that probably came from the Patriot Act and came after September 11th is none of it did we really need. If they had done their job to begin with, it wouldn't have happened. And that's a fact. So, but that's what they're going to do again, right? Well, they'll let this all play out till something happens. And then they won't, I don't know, maybe they'll come out and say it's our fault just straight out, or they'll just come out and say, one will probably already be in martial law, but then they'll come out and say, okay, this is why we need to have cameras and surveillance everywhere. We need digital ID. We need to be able to track everything and everybody all the time in an effort of keeping you safe in the interest of public safety.
Well, and look at the mask Nazis during Charlie 19 that were all too compliant and rolling over and saying, okay, we'll give up all our liberties. If one saves one person, it's worth it.
There was somebody in the comment that said, hey, will the N5 protect you from a nuclear blast or, the fallout? And it's like, well, of course it will, dude. It could protect you from every virus and everything else. It's got to be. Come on, why are you even asking?
Get that person another jug of Kool-Aid.
No, that's right.
So Don, the CBP confirmed that many thousands of Iranian nationals entered illegally during the Biden installation 2021, 2024. How does that translate into, or how does it affect the current threat calculation? And, there's no way to remediate this, is there?
No, there's not at all. But it's like when I was talking to William S. Lynn, the great generations of war theorist and military historian, he made a good point. Even if, say, 20,000 Iranians came in during that period, and 1% of that 20,000, 2,000 of them, even less than that, say 100 of them are in a cell or cells, that could do a lot of damage. And like you guys have talked about, especially with the fusion centers, we're in the middle of a major campaign in the Middle East right now, taking down the leading state sponsor of terrorism, and the Democrats have the government shut down. It's treacherous. I would tell it to their face. They're traitors because they're more conservative than their ideology. But that's all favoring that small segment that could do so much damage if they're able to coordinate into a complex attack.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Randy, when you guys were deployed as Green Berets, you can state it better than I can, but you guys were trained to do all kinds of stuff, right? Like to get involved in, the community that you're at, essentially help them rebuild or build all kinds of community network stuff that other special forces don't really do outside of you guys. With that type of mentality, like the same mentality that you guys would bring to a war-torn area, what could communities do to improve their early warning systems and communications in light of the feds being essentially offline? Like, what would you as a Green Beret say to a small community? You should be doing these things from an early warning and detection standpoint to ensure that we have a chance to react to this sooner rather than later, because the feds have basically left us high and dry.
Well, the first thing you have to do is have an honest conversation and admit that this is coming, or it can happen, or that there's a possibility that your community, your neighborhood is going to be affected in some way by this. And then really it's about communication. What we would do is we go in, and we meet everybody. And, like your neighborhood, what you would start doing is helping each other. Everybody's got little projects to do. You would help each other. And in this, you're building a rapport and you're showing each other that you can depend on each other, right? Even for the little stuff. And so then you got to realize that you need to start paying attention. I don't remember what decade it was. I think it was the 70s, right? 60s or 70s when that neighborhood watch came up, right? And why did that come up? Well, because the local crime and gangs in the streets were getting so violent and things that the people needed to take back their neighborhoods. This will be no different. Your own community, your own neighborhood, each street, y'all would have to come together. And again, as we've always mentioned, come up with a plan. When this happens, what are we going to do? But even in the short term, we know it's coming. Then, maybe you have some kind of little roster, fire guard, where even overnight, y'all share duties of somebody roams the streets at night just to make sure there's no criminal element coming in and breaking in or coming through and taking information, either one. You would start getting yeah, that's right. Exactly right. You would get proactive. And that takes coordination and organization. And again, that's going to take some time, but that's people getting together and doing little projects together, because that's what we do. You come in, the first thing we start doing is improving that village. One, for self-defense, and that is self-explanatory. There's lots of things you can do, barriers, clean things up. You also have a lot, like in Vietnam, all the camps we had, they cleared the land for hundreds of meters all the way around it so that you could see anybody that was coming up. You may not go to that extreme, but there's some small things that you could do that would be similar. And again, then it's just about coming up with all these little different things you're going to do to improve your neighborhood, your streets, and your homes, and then coming up with people that pay attention and some sort of little reporting system, that you would record things. And again, the biggest thing would get to know your neighbors and then be observant. You know what I mean? As we've all mentioned many times here, generally, if you look at even people coming in and out of your neighborhood, the only person paying attention in the car, and that's only half the time, because half of them are on their phone too. But if you look into everybody's cars, it's no different when you're at a restaurant, the whole family's over there. They're not talking. They're all on their phones. So biggest thing would be start paying attention to what's actually going on, and you might see some stuff. But you will definitely see some stuff, and you'll see it coming whenever whatever happens. And you just might be prepared enough to help your neighborhood survive this, not unscathed, but survive it.
So I got a follow-up question, because you raised a good point there, Randy, but just quickly on the last stuff that you said, I took the dogs for a walk this afternoon. It's usually a short walk during the day because it's so hot here in Florida. They get a longer walk in the morning and at night. And there was a guy wandering around, shaved head, tattoos all over his head, his face, his arms, Caucasian guy, like 6'2", 230 pounds. And he went from the far side of the street to my side of the street. And I'm walking two pit bulls, and normally they go the other direction, right? So immediately that kind of raised a red flag. And as I got closer to him, I thought, you know what, I'm going to walk to the other side of the street to avoid a confrontation here. And he said, hey man, you know, this is whatever street, what the street that we live on. And I said, yeah. And he said, man, I'm looking for my partner. I don't know where he is. He's left me stranded here. And I'm pretty sure he was casing the place, right? So as I walk, Randy, and I'm carrying on the other side of the road, I turn around like this, and he's now crossed to my side of the road and is following me. Ooh. And I'm carrying like I always am. And so I get up to the next corner where I was planning on doing a U-turn anyway. And just before we did the U-turn, I took my phone like I was dialing, and I put it up in the mirror like I was talking to somebody. And I let the dogs take a piss on this lawn while I had the camera facing them and managed to videotape them for a good 10 seconds. And even him not seeing what I was doing was enough for me to be on the phone. I think he thought I called 911, basically. Yep. Long story short is I'm watching, keeping an eye on him now because he stayed up near that area, and he went down a side street and disappeared. You got to have eyes like front, backwards, left, right, everywhere these days, especially if something doesn't look, it's like Sesame Street, right? Which one doesn't belong? That guy did not belong in our neighborhood. But here's a question for you, Randy. And I want to try put a time frame range on this before we go to segment 5. So Khalid, his team is many hundreds of guys, and many hundreds of them in Afghanistan that penetrated over 80 of 120 known terrorist cells last year. He provides a shit ton of intel to governments across Europe, Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and all points in between. And the last piece of intel that he got as far as the size of CCTAs in America, originally it was 10 to 15 cities. Now it's 25 plus cities at the same time. So give me some idea, Randy, and I'm just asking you to speculate. But if 25 American cities get attacked simultaneously at the same time, what is the best case scenario for federal, assets to respond? What's the worst case scenario? And there's a reason I'm asking you this, because of number one, what people will have to do to fill that gap. And number two, the best thing you can do is get all of your preps in order, like food, ammunition, and stuff right now, because you may have to lock down for whatever that range of time is that you think it might be, Randy. So best case scenario, how fast do the feds get there? Worst case scenario, how slow do they get there?
Well, best case scenario, we'll go with, and I don't know what, FBI response times are, right? As if something happens in that city, how fast is an FBI, if it requires one, to be on there? Or is it, because I think they have to be requested on some things and other things they don't. But we'll just go with the best case scenario that within only a couple of hours, they're able to hit the ground or less and start doing something about it. And really, the best case scenario would be that they stop some of this before it even happens, because I think we have that ability. I just think they're not doing it. So that would really be the best case scenario. Pop the lid on this before it happens. I don't think that's going to happen. So the best case scenario is within a matter of hours, they're at every 25 or however many cities that are attacked, even though we know there's not a very big number of them, and that they're able to pull together assets and resources and shut this down within 24 hours or less. That would be best case. Everything goes perfectly and they actually respond and do what they're supposed to do. And that's speculating because, again, I don't know what the actual response times are supposed to be. And certainly if 25 cities got hit at once. Worst case scenario is they look just like FEMA during some of these hurricanes. And it's days, maybe a week before they start showing up. And then they don't seem to have any sort of sense of urgency, we'll say, about it. And then further that worst case scenario, maybe they pick between conservatives and other people. You know, I think the worst case scenario potential seems to be great. You know what I mean? And that we don't have a whole lot of help from these federal agencies, even after it gets going, because again, if they shut the power down within 48 hours on the internet, who's really going to know?
Yeah. So I think number one, we don't have the federal resources to respond to 25 cities at the same time.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Like the FBI's HRT teams, so hostage rescue teams, there's only 140 assets there, and that's split between 4 teams. So realistically, they could respond to 4 cities, and the response time would vary on where it is in the country. You could be right. Best case could be a couple hours. Worst case, to get one of those teams out to a city is probably no more than about 5 or 6 hours, because they're on standby all the time. But that's only 4 HRT teams. That's not
well.
enough.
We would hope, but it's probably not true. I hope the FBI is like the Marines, right? Every Marine is a rifleman first, regardless of what their job is. So hopefully FBI agents are the same, but I doubt that they are.
They aren't, because, you know, I saw somebody conversing in the chat discussing, you know, 40 cal Smith & Wesson, which is a downsized 10 millimeter. And the goal was to equip the FBI with 10 millimeter sidearms. And I love 10 millimeter, by the way. My whole thing with 10 millimeter is 9 millimeter for the hoods, 10 millimeter for the woods. And the problem is that the bulk of the FBI agents couldn't pass their firearms qualification with 10 millimeter.
What? And that's supposed to be their deal. If you're in the FBI and you're an agent, no matter what your job is, you're supposed to be able to shoot.
So they basically took material out, and specifically gunpowder, and called it a 40 cal Smith & Wesson, right? So at the end of the day, I'll put a lid on it here, but if it happens in a big city where the HRT is already primarily based out of, like I would say in the DC area, the response would be pretty quick. Okay. But again, you got 4 HRT teams. We don't have big, highly trained SWAT teams in a lot of cities. Delta Force would take some time to get there. I think that best case scenario is you live in the Beltway and you get a response in a matter of hours. Worst case scenario, I'm going to say 10 to 15 days before you see any federal assets, because there just aren't enough.
Well, in light of what you just said, it might be never too. Some of those might be never.
Could be never as well. Yep, absolutely. So let's get into the 5th and final segment, the preparedness response, hardening your position before the signal comes. The preparedness response to a distributed sleeper network threat is not about predicting the exact attack. It's about compressing the time between the event onset and your family's ability to execute a pre-planned response without depending on the grid, a cell network, or functioning government communications chain. Situational awareness at the community level is probably the most undervalued force multiplier in domestic security. Knowing your neighbors, knowing your routes, knowing your rally points, and having practiced those plans under non-emergency conditions is going to be the difference between being a victim probably and being an asset. And as Don says, I'm paraphrasing, of course, but if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. The theological foundation for this preparedness posture, by the way, is not fear, it's stewardship. You know, the same God who commands us to love our neighbor, which, you know, the lunatic liberals like to use against us. Well, he also commands us to protect our household, and doing neither when the tools and knowledge are available isn't faith. It's just complete negligence. So, Jeff, coming back to you first, as per usual, the creature of habit. For a family with no military or law enforcement background, what would you say the 3 highest leverage preparedness actions are that they can take right now in light of everything that we've discussed tonight?
Well, you need backup power, because if they take down the grid, you're pretty well hosed. And that can be a solar battery, it can be a generator. And those can be acquired today. You can go down to Home Depot or Harbor Freight and get something. The other would be to have some food laid on. And again, you can do that today too. You can go to Safeway and buy some canned goods and stack them up so that if you do have to hunker down, that you won't starve to death. And I think the other one would be to kind of have a bug out plan. Because your whole neighborhood could go to shit, and you may think, okay, we need to get to grandma's house out in the farmlands, but you need to have a vehicle that will transport your family. And you probably do. If you have kids, you have a minivan or something to carry the kids, but you got to make sure it's full of gas. And if getting to grandma's house means you need to stop to refuel, that may not be available. So have a jerry can of gasoline available to go to. Like those friends of yours said, they want to be more than one tank of gas away from a major city, if the shit hits the fan. But you've got to figure out, okay, power goes off. How do I maintain what I have? How do I feed my family in the interim? And then if I have to bug out, am I prepared to do that?
Yeah, good advice. One of the bullets that I had in here was on a neighborhood comms network. Yeah. So that really would depend on the size of your neighborhood. But I would recommend, like, if you have a community, let's say, that's inside of 1.5 miles, GMRS radios are the way to go as far as economics are concerned. So you can get 5+ watt HTs, which are walkie-talkies. You can get 50 watt mobiles that also function as base. So mobile being in your truck or car, base being somewhere like the ones sitting beside me here. Just keep in mind that GMRS radios don't have any encryption, and we use our GMRS radios to spy on everybody else around us, to be quite frank. So at the bare minimum, you want to equip people in your neighborhood with GMRS radios. I can't remember the price now. I want to say it's like $35, $40 at the FCC, and you get a 10-year license. There's no test with GMRS. There's 22 channels. 16 of them, though, are also shared with FRS, which is the little bubble radios you see from Walmart. So they're really good for gathering intel on those channels. But again, anything you say over it, there's a chance that somebody's listening to you, but it doesn't cost much. And that license not only covers everybody under your roof, it covers all the way out to your first cousins for a 10-year period. Now, during SHTF, you don't need a license. You're good to go. But either way, GMRS radios would be my recommendation for anybody who's on a budget. If you're not on a tight budget, then you want to go business class radios. You'll get 5 frequencies designated to you by the FCC with a 50-mile radius. That's what we have. And everything is encrypted. You've got channel hopping. So our radios flip through 3 different channels every second, which is nothing compared to the Harris radios the military has, which is 100 channels per second. But either way, nobody can hear anything on those frequencies. It's encrypted, and they're dedicated frequencies. I recommend UHF. You can have them program UHF or VHF. UHF performs better like in call it a neighborhood setting, suburban setting. And I'm sure there's a sad ham out there who wants to argue with me over that, but that's the facts. So with that being said, I'm going to skip beyond that and come to you, Don. The 72-hour window after a major event or attack is typically the most dangerous and the most chaotic. What's the 72-hour family plan look like in terms of the basics? Food, water, comms, medical, and of course, security.
As we've touched upon before, we have a 30-day supply of everything, water being the most important, because you can go a max of 3 days without water. You can go without food for 2 weeks. You're not going to be in great shape, of course. But we have that plan. We have small SOP, like I keep my truck, when it gets close to 3/4 of a tank, I keep it filled up. We keep cash on hand because in my, based on what I've studied and reviewed, ATMs are electronic. Food purchasing, gas purchasing is electronic. So you need at least a couple of grand of cash on hand to be able to expend. Our SOP, like I've said before, is we're going to link up with some good veterans in our area, gather, and then determine what to do next. But we have the primary plan is we all have 4-wheel drive trucks, and we all carry supplies in the trucks. We're going to link up and move out to a rally point out in the country somewhere, and then go from there. So we have that plan, and we've talked about it. Whenever I meet with my buddies, we either update or remind each other what we're going to do. So and it doesn't take very long to come up with a plan, and among 3 or 4 people that you trust, 3 or 4 people that you kind of know that you can rely on, and then talk about it and keep updating.
Don is the man with a plan. I love it. Well done. So, Randy, coming back to you from a Green Berets perspective, what does a realistic home defense plan look like for a single family suburban environment, and you've got jihadis going door to door like they did in Israel on 10/7? What are your recommendations for people to be able to defend their homes?
Well, they better have a firearm. As we know, there's a lot of people that don't today. And if you don't have a firearm when something like this happens, you're not going to be able to protect yourself, your family, or your property. And even that firearm may not be enough. It depends on how big the crowd is. And so, it's hard to describe what that would look like, because, again, that also comes down to budget. It's going to come down to what these people's beliefs are, whether they really believe they need to do it or not. And unfortunately, right now, most of them think that they do not. That's just the sad truth of the matter. But if you were serious about it, if somebody said, okay, what do I want to do? Well, you need to, if something like this happened, and that that it's close by, and you live in a neighborhood or suburban that's not very far out of there, you probably should harden up your house. By that, I mean, you should probably do something about your windows, similar to what people do with a hurricane, with the exception you might not want to put it all on the outside, right? Because if you just put up if you just put plywood like they do over a window, somebody can just pull that right down. So you want to harden your house a little bit, and I would start letting your family know of where you're going to go. If you had a basement, maybe there's something you can do with a basement. Obviously, if somebody has a safe room, you would go over plans of what you would do with the safe room. But honestly, all of those are difficult because you're still trapped in your house. And if a big crowd come along and they seized you inside your house and they went into a siege, well, at some point they're going to set your house on fire to get you out of there. That's just the sad truth of the matter. But that would, be if there's no help and nothing coming, which very well may happen. So again, if you don't have some sort of firearms and some way to protect yourself, you're not going to have any help. And I know we talk about comms all the time, but again, all the stuff we talked about, including radios, they all take power and electricity. So if there's no electricity, sooner or later, and it's going to be sooner, most people are going to run out of stored battery power, stored fuel for their generators. And guess what? You're not going to be able to communicate much farther outside yelling to your neighbors. Right. So that's why it's going to be very important. You might want to know them and might be able to trust them.
The final question is going to you, Jeff, but I just want to touch on a couple things quickly. Don mentioned 3 days without water. I can tell you after 2 days without water, most people are not thinking, in a lucid manner, and you could make some pretty bad decisions that end up in, your end. And as Don mentioned, you can't fight on an empty stomach. What was the saying, Jeff, from Napoleon? An army marches on its stomach or something along those lines. And then as far as Randy's stuff, I would say in addition to having like a home defense plan, you better have an exfil plan, because as I mentioned earlier tonight, if somebody wants in, they're going to get in. Hardening your home is all about slowing them down as much as you can. And everybody's circumstances are different. So I'm not telling you to do this if you got youngins, but guns loaded and staged around the house is a necessity if you're going to be truly prepared. And reinforcing your entry points, take the dang screws out of the hinges on your man doors that are tiny and put in some 3.5 inch screws, go all the way back into the jack stud. Then put Doricades or a product like that behind them, that'll stop somebody from kicking the door down. Now, if you're a breacher like a Green Beret, like Randy's guys, I got bad news for you. They're getting in very, very quickly. I saw a guy from Genesis Arms. They build the most badass 12-gauge shotguns in the world that the cyclic rate is out of control. Mike Glover and I got to shoot them. They made a 5-inch shotgun with a suppressor on it. The suppressor only brought it down to about 140 dB. It's called the Zipper. They literally point at the top of a door in the middle and go full auto like that and walk through the door when it opens up in the middle. But Randy quickly touched on hurricane film. Put the hurricane film on the inside of your windows. Have a professional do it. You'll never know it's there. Somebody throws a Molotov cocktail at the window. The glass will break, but the film will hold it together. Somebody would have to come up like with a butt of a rifle to actually knock through that and get a Molotov cocktail or a burning tire. Burning tires is one of the favorite things for these shitbags, by the way. Throw a few burning tires into a home, even just one, and it'll smoke you out before you burn up. So, Jeff, final question for you, because you're the ultra pragmatic guy amongst all of us.
I wouldn't go that far, but
well, I mean, everything's relative, so, but where does the line fall between being prepared and paranoid, in your opinion?
The difference between being prepared and being paranoid is if someone attacks you. If someone attacks you, you're prepared. If they don't, you're paranoid.
It's good.
But I'm with you on guns. All of my guns, save one, it's an old antique. All of my guns are loaded all the time. And if we have people coming over and there's going to be kids, I'll lock them up for that visit, but they're always back out. And I have a very simple mentality. An unloaded gun is a very expensive rock.
Yeah,
it's not a tool. It's not a weapon anymore. Well, it is, but I mean, it's not a gun. It's not a firearm. It's a freaking rock. Yeah. If you have an AR that's not loaded, is a big stick. That's all it is.
Yeah, and hey, more people get killed by hammers.
You're not trying to stop the world. You're trying to make them move on to the next target. They go, that one's too much work. We'll go to the next one.
Well, Randy can confirm. We got a saying in Texas that an unloaded gun is useless as tits on a bull.
Yeah, it really is.
Or a boar hog.
There you go. So, Randy, you know what time of night it is, right? You help me count down here, buddy.
Yeah,
4, 3, 2, 1. All right. So it is time for the Carnival. Jeez, I lost my train of thought there for a second. The Carnival practical payoff. Golly. So that's what happens when you work 16 plus hours a day, 7 days a week. So this is where we cover one skill, one item, one mindset shift relative to tonight's topic from our panel to y'all out there. Jeff, I'm going to give you first crack. Take your pick. One skill, one item, or one mindset shift.
I'm going to go with the mindset shift. If you're a soldier, if you're a cop, if you're caught with your family in particular, in the middle of what looks to be a terrorist attack, your job is not to win. Your job is to survive and get your family to survive. And if that means running away, run away. There is no award for bravest dead guy on the battlefield.
That's well said. Mike Glover did a recent piece on self-defense. I think it was on his Patreon. And somebody asked a question and said, well, if you're unarmed and somebody comes running at you with a knife, how do you defend yourself? And Mike's response was, you run away as fast as you can. If you're not there, you can't get stabbed.
Yeah. Remember, you only have to run faster than the slowest guy.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's that old saying, I can run faster scared than you can mad. Don, one skill or one item, since Jeff took the mindset shift, one skill or one item.
I'm going to keep repeating myself, but I think it's necessary with all the new viewers. Keep it simple, stupid plan. Continue to plan. It doesn't have to be a complex plan. Just do something. Okay. Our plan goes on one sheet. Okay. We keep it simple. The SOP is on the same sheet. Just do these things. and you'll have a chance. And I agree completely with Jeff. Your first concern is to get your family out of there and get them to a place that is secure or fairly secure so you can fight another day.
Yeah, well said, Don. We have no relationship with Mad Gear whatsoever. You can look them up on a search engine, or you can go to Amazon, punch in Mad Gear Contingency Planner, and it's awesome stuff that'll give you some templates to start with as far as putting your plan together is concerned.
Yeah.
And it goes way beyond just a simple home defense plan. So, Randy, I guess that leaves you with one item.
Well, in light of the topic and then what we discussed, I'm going to have to go with, you need a lot of firearms. You need a lot of ammo. So, and then you need to be proficient at it, as we talked about last night. Don't just go out and buy you a gun or 10 or 100. Go out and learn how to use that thing to the point you can blindfold yourself and take it apart and put it together. And then worry about the timing, and then you can get it down to a small time frame. But also how to wield it, how to use it, and then as we talked about, you might even try to do some stress inoculation training just so you will understand slightly what it might be like when you're in an actual, if you ever had to get in an actual gunfight.
Yeah, true story. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to go with one item. Just because you guys covered all the bases, I'm going to cover food.
Buddy.
You can't fight if you're having an empty stomach. And there's a reason why we partner up with these guys. Wasatch Wagyu, SD 20% off, the best jerky in the world. Like, this stuff is a game changer, and it's super high quality protein, super high quality fats. Somebody said that's the dill pickle there. Don't buy the dill pickle. It sucks. Randy can confirm it's terrible.
Terrible.
We told Greg Wasatch, we got the bases covered. We'll look after eating all the dill pickle so that y'all don't have to suffer through it. But these guys also have subscriptions. So Wagyu beef, $100 a pound. So these strips at full retail are $6. I make sandwiches out of them, by the way. But they have 3 levels of subscriptions. The highest one, you get it down to $3.70 a piece. And much like Carnivalt, if you sign up for a subscription for Carnivalt or Wasatch Wagyu, forward your monthly email receipt to support@survivaldispatch.com. We'll give you a free membership for each 30 days to Survival Dispatch Guardians. And Carnivalt, this is the best quality beef, chicken, and pork that you can buy that's 100% American with no bullshit in it whatsoever. This bag, 6 ounces, freeze dried, 25-year shelf life, makes 1.5 pounds of raw beef. Mike Glover and I are addicted to that as well. It's breakfast, lunch, dinner, and plus you stack it up for preps. But that basically gets us through tonight. Of course, we'll be back tomorrow night at the same time with the next episode in our long war series, the Jihadists Underground. And the theme is escalating homeland threat environment as global conflict spills into domestic security. Want to thank all of our supporters, whether it be Carnivalt, whether it be Wasatch Wagyu, our guardians who pay $9.99 a month or $99.99 a year. We've got an awesome community. 15,000 messages a week go through the private server that I built for our community. You get our SDN's alert, survival dispatch, emergency notification system. So these are SHTF alerts. They go to your email. They go to our Substack. They go to the SDN's channel on my Element server. Oh, we lost Don. He clicked the wrong button. And they go to POClink radios if you have POClink radios as well. And it's one thing, being a tech guy, that we've built a lot of resilience and redundancy into it. When we send SHTF alerts, you're going to get it one way or another, come hell or high water. So other than that, here's Don. We get Don back in to say goodbye. Don, you clicked.
I heard about that. Something happened. I don't.
Hey, did anybody else out there? We got to do one more audience poll here. When Don just said something happened, did anybody else have a flashback to Spicoli saying something happened to it, man? when the teacher was like, "Where's your homework? Where's your homework? Something happened to it, man." That's the first thing I thought when I heard that.
I think somebody compared him to one of the characters in The Professionals or at the beginning of the show because he has the beanie and the
There you go.
go. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I love it. All right, so we'll wrap up here. God bless our law enforcement officers.
Yep.
God bless our military. God bless America.
That's America.
God
See you
bless.
guys later. Have a good week.
Enjoy the closing video. It's a good one. It's brand new.